Morning. Just getting ready to read the next chapters and how to eat fried worms. Where we left off, the boys had found a worm and we're getting ready to bring it to Billy. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Billy was doing push-ups in the deserted horse barn. He wasn't worried about eating the first worm, but people were always daring him to do things, and he'd found it was better to look ahead, to try to figure things out, get himself ready. Last winter, Alan had dared him to sleep out all night in the igloo they'd built in Tom's backyard. Why not? Billy thought to himself. What could happen? About midnight, huddled shivering under his blankets in the darkness, he began to wonder if he should give up and go home. His feet felt like aching stones in his boots. Even his tongue inside his mouth was cold. But half an hour later, as he was stubbornly dancing about outside in the moonlight to warm himself, Tom's dog Martha had come along with 6 other dogs, all in a pack, and Billy had coaxed them into the igloo and blocked the door with an orange crate. And after the dogs had stopped wrestling and nipping and barking and sniffing around, they'd all gone to sleep in a heap with Billy in the middle, as warm as an onion in a stew. But he hadn't been able to think of anything special to do to prepare himself for eating a worm. So he was just limbering up in general, push-ups, knee bends, jumping jacks, red-faced, perspiring. Nearby on an orange crate, he'd set out bottles of ketchup and Worcestershire sauce, jars of piccalilli, which is like a hot salsa, and mustard, a box of crackers, salt and pepper shakers, a lemon, a slice of cheese, his mother's tin cinnamon and sugar shaker, a box of Kleenex, a jar of maraschino cherries, some horseradish, and a plastic honey bear. Tom's head appeared around the door. Ready? Billy scrambled up, brushing back his hair. Yeah. Ta-ra! Tom flung the door open. Alan marched in carrying a covered silver platter in both hands. Joe slouching along beside him with a napkin over one arm, nodding and smiling. Tom dragged another orange crate over beside the first. Alan set the silver platter on it. A chair, cried Alan. A chair for the monsieur. Come on, said Billy. Cut the clowning. Tom found an old milking stool in one of the horse stalls. Joe dusted it off with his napkin, showing his teeth, and then ushered Billy into it. Ladies and gentlemen, shouted Alan, I present my masterpiece, Worm à la mode. He swept the cover off the platter. Ah! Cried Billy, recoiling. The first worm. The huge night crawler sprawled limply in the center of the platter, brown and steaming. Boiled, said Tom. We boiled it. Billy stormed about the barn, kicking barrels and posts, arguing, a night crawler isn't a worm. If it was a worm, it'd be called a worm. A night crawler's a night crawler. Finally, Joe ran off to get his father's dictionary. Night crawler, noun, earthworm, especially a large earthworm found on the soil surface at night. Billy kicked a barrel. It wasn't fair. He didn't care what the dictionary said. Everybody knew the difference between a night crawler and a worm. Look at the thing. Ugh. It was as big as a souvenir pencil from the Empire State Building. Yuck! He poked it with his finger. Alan said they'd agreed right at the start that he and Joe could choose the worms. If Billy was going to cheat, the bet was off. He got up and started for the door. He guessed he had other things to do besides argue all day with a liar. So Tom took Billy aside into a horse stall and put his arm around Billy's shoulders and talked to him about George Cunningham's brother's mini bike and how they could ride it on a trail under the power lines behind Odell's farm, up and down the hills, bounding over rocks. Rum, rum. Sure, it was a big worm, but only be a couple bites. Did he want to lose a mini bike over 2 bites? Slop enough mustard and ketchup and horseradish on it, and he wouldn't even taste it. Yeah, said Billy, I could probably eat this one, but I gotta eat 15. Can't quit now, said Tom. Look at them. He nodded at Alan and Joe, waiting beside the orange crates. They'll tell everybody you were chicken. It'll be all over school. Come on. He led Billy back to the orange crates, sat him down, tied the napkin around his neck. Alan flourished the knife and fork. He showed it off to them. Would monsieur like eat carved lengthwise or crosswise? Ketchup, said Joe, showing his teeth. Cut it out, said Tom. Here. He glopped ketchup and mustard and horseradish on the night crawler, squeezed on a few drops of lemon juice, and salted and peppered it. Billy closed his eyes and opened his mouth. Oh, what then? Tom sliced off the end of the night crawler and forked it up. But just as he was about to poke it into Billy's open mouth, Billy closed his mouth and opened his eyes. No, let me do it. Tom handed him the fork. Billy gazed at the dripping ketchup and mustard, thinking, it's all right talking about eating worms, but doing it? Tom whispered in his ear, Mini bike. Glug. Billy poked the fork into his mouth, chewed furiously. Gulp, gulped. His eyes crossed, swam, squinched shut. He flapped his arms wildly, and then, opening his eyes, he grinned beautifully up at Tom. Superb, Gaston. Tom cut another piece, ketched up, mustard, salted, peppered, horseradished, and lemoned it, and handed the fork to Billy. Billy slugged it down, smacking his lips. And so they proceeded, now sprinkling on cinnamon and sugar, or a bit of cheese, some cracker crumbs, or Worcestershire sauce, until there was nothing on the plate but a few stray dabs of ketchup and mustard. Well, said Billy, standing up and wiping his mouth with his napkin. So, we are done with the first course. Now, seconds? Let me look in your mouth, said Alan. Yeah, said Joe. See if he swallowed it all. Certainly, said Billy. Look as long as you want. Alan and Joe scrutinized the inside of his mouth. Okay, said Tom. Leave him alone now. Come on, 1 down, 14 to go. How'd it taste? Asked Alan. Goot, said Billy. Very fine. Woohoo! He flapped his arms like a big bird and began to hop around the barn, crying, Goot. Very fine. Goot. Alan and Joe and Tom looked worried. Yeah, goot. How you feeling, Billy? Tom asked. Yeah, stop flapping around and come tell us how you're feeling, said Joe. Picture him flapping around like a bird and his friends looking all worried. They huddled together by the orange crates as Billy hopped around and around them, flapping his arms. Goot. Very fine. Woo-hoo! Alan whispered. He's crackers. Joe edged toward the door. Don't let him see we're afraid. Crazy people are like dogs. If they see you're afraid, they'll attack. Couldn't be, whispered Tom, standing his ground. 1 worm? Goot, screeched Billy, hopping higher and drooling from the mouth. Come on, whispered Joe to Tom. Hey, Billy, burst out Tom suddenly in a hearty, quavering voice. Cut it out, will you? I want to ask you something. Billy's arms flapped slower. He tiptoed menacingly around Tom, his head cocked to one side, his cheeks puffed out. Tom hugged himself, chuckling nervously. Cut it out, will you, Billy? Billy pounced. Joe and Alan fled the barn door, banging behind them. Billy rolled on the floor, helpless with laughter. Tom clambered up, stood back up again, brushing himself off. Did you see their faces? Billy said, laughing, climbing over climbing over each other out the door. Oh, geez, Joe was pale as an onion. Yeah, said Tom. Ha, you fooled them. Oh, geez, Billy said. Then he crawled over to the door and peered out through a knothole. Look at them, peeking up over the stone wall. Watch this. The door swung slowly open. Screeching Billy hopped into the door sill, into the yard, up onto a stump, splashed into a puddle, flapping his arms, rolling his head. Alan and Joe galloped up the hill through the high grass, yelling, Here he comes, get out of the way. And then Billy stopped hopping and climbing up on the stump, called in a shrill, girlish voice, Oh, boyos, where are you going? I'd something dare to you little boys. Alan and Joe stopped and looked back. I do going home, little boys, yelled Billy. Are you tired? Who scared you, lunk? Called Alan. Yeah, yelled Joe. I guess I can go home without being scared if I want to. But ain't you in a awful hurry? Shouted Billy. I just remembered I was supposed to help my mother wash windows this afternoon, said Alan. That's all. He turned and started up through the meadow, his hands in his pockets. Yeah, said Joe, me too. Trudged after Alan.